brother said, it's about Samuel's call from God. So our lesson today takes place again at Shiloh in the tabernacle after Hannah had taken her little 3-year-old son Samuel there, and she had left him to fulfill her vow to God. Chapter 2 consists of the Song of Thanksgiving. It's her exaltation to God for his favor to her in giving her Samuel. Because Samuel was given to her, remember, as an answer to her prayer. And he was a child with an exceptional character because his mother had dedicated him to the Lord even before he was born. And there in chapter 2, that's a beautiful picture of the boy priest and his loving mother Hannah. Because in addition to the linen ephod that this young boy Samuel wore, which all priests wore, which hung from their shoulders and was fastened at the waist by a girdle. And besides this, every year when Hannah went to the feast at Shiloh, for the annual sacrifice with her family, she brought her boy a special kind of coat that she had made for him. It was perhaps a long upper coat that all kings and prophets and men of high rank wore in those days. And also in chapter 2 is recorded the crimes of Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas. They were evil, perverse, wicked priests. And yet they served at the door of the temple, corrupting the women that came to work the temple. And they took parts of the sacrificial offerings that the people brought to the temple for them. They took part of that for themselves before they were offered to God, rather than waiting until after the offering had been made, as God had instructed them. Thereby they put themselves before God and showed contempt to God's laws. And their dishonesty turned many, many people away from God. We need to be very careful about how we live our lives, how we run our churches. This idea of shutting our eyes to sin in the church and just sweeping it under the rug, trying to cover it up, just drives people from God. Eli shut his eyes to the sins of his sons and to their gross immorality. And there was an open scandal all over Israel. Now he knew that they were evil. He knew what they were doing. And he knew that that was leading the Israelites into sin. And he talked to them about it. But instead of taking positive steps to correct the situation, instead of punishing them for their behavior, all that Eli did was give his boys a little tap on the wrist, reprove them gently, because he was an indulgent father. And yet, while Samuel is growing up under this kind of influence, under the influence of Eli's sons, his mother doesn't forget him. And even in this bad environment, Samuel is growing in favor with God and man, and he's dedicated to God because he's backed by his mother's prayers and his mother's interests, and God is going to use him. God was through with Eli as a high priest. Instead, now, he's raising up a priest prophet, and it's going to be Samuel. Samuel would minister for the Lord, and his office would be that of a prophet. There's going to be a drastic change now in the form of government. From now on, the period of the judges is over, and no longer will God move through the priest. Now he's raising up a prophet, and Samuel will be that one. It's Samuel who will pour out the anointing oil on King Saul and King David, because God will never speak again directly to a king. He'll speak only now through a prophet. And that brings us to our lesson today. So let's begin and read verses 1 through 3 together. And the child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli. And the word of the Lord was precious in those days. There was no open vision. And it came to pass at that time, when Eli was laid down in his place, and his eyes began to wax dim, that he could not see. And ere the Lamb of God went out of the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was, and Samuel was laid down to sleep. Now the child, notice it says, the child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli. And notice again the word child here. Josephus tells us he was not just a 3-year-old. He was probably 12 years old or a little older, probably a young teenager now at this time. And the word of the Lord was precious in those days. Now, in order to understand the life and the work of Samuel, and especially his boyhood, we need to recognize the moral and the religious and the political conditions of that day. It was near the close now of the period of the judges, and during this time, the people had been trained by rewarding them for their obedience and punishing them for their disobedience. That's how they trained them. They were in a system of government called a theocracy, meaning a condition where God only is king. And while there were leaders and rulers, there was no political unity except the laws and the religions of God. And on the whole, this was all good. The nation was really making a spiritual progress. The ark, the tabernacle, the central place of worship was at Shiloh. Yet, at the same time, the people were without permanent leaders to enable them to withstand the moral and the material influences of the surrounding nations. Now, if they had remained true to the religious teachings of Moses, they might have been all right. But many of them were going astray. For example, as we have seen, Eli's son, for the word of the Lord was precious in those days. It was scarce. The Philistines were now invading the country. It was time for a change because God's chosen people are headed for a crisis, second only to that one of the Exodus. And they needed a new leader. Secondly, they needed a commander, a counselor that they could turn to for advice. They needed precisely the two great institutions which Samuel was ordained to give them: an order of prophets and a permanent, organized government. Now notice again that we're told in verse 1 that the word of the Lord was precious in those days, and there was no open vision. There was no one that the people could go to for counsel, for godly advice. The word of God was scarce. There was none that were publicly known to have visions in those days. There was no proper order of persons from whom speakers for God would naturally step up and give words to the people. And for this purpose, God raised up Samuel. And we learn here how God did this, how God revealed himself to this young boy, Samuel. Now it seems that Eli is growing old, and his eyesight is failing him. It's compared to the lights going out in the temple when the priest was supposed to refill the oil, It's comparable to that. So Samuel, still called a child now, 12 years old, around there, a little more. He kept very, very close to him. He waited on Eli night and day. He was constantly helping him, constantly serving him, because no doubt Eli had other infirmities besides being able to see well. He was well up in his age. So while Eli's own sons didn't pay any attention to him, didn't pay a bit of attention to their father in his old age, this young child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli, night and day, much to their shame, much to their aggravation. They had slighted and rebelled against their father, but Samuel far from being influenced by their bad example, ministered to Eli day and night. And now it seems time for God to reveal himself to Samuel. And he's done so in a very, very unusual way. It seems that on this particular night, Eli had gone to bed. He had retired for the day. And all the rest of the people who served in the temple every day had also gone back to their own living quarters. So now it's very quiet. Eli has gone to sleep after Samuel had attended to all of his needs. And Samuel then went to his own little closet room close by, within call if the old man needed anything during the night. Maybe to bring him a drink, cool water, or read to him if he couldn't go to sleep. And in those days, we learned by research that there were living quarters built in connection with the tabernacle for the high priest and for the others who were immediately employed for service in the tabernacle. And in one of these, Eli had a bedroom, and Samuel had another little one close by. So this night, both Eli and little Samuel lay down to sleep. The lamps in the temple were growing dimmer, which indicates it was later in the evening before the priest came in to replenish the oil so they'd burn all night. So it was probably maybe close to midnight. Samuel had been busy cleaning the holy place, reading, maybe praying a little bit, and finally, in the quietness, in the dim light, he went to bed. And he dozed off. And suddenly, he heard a voice. He heard a voice calling his name, Samuel! Now, you have to remember, Samuel's not yet acquainted with visions of the Almighty God. He's not acquainted with God's voice yet. And he knew about and he worshiped the Lord God of Israel, but he didn't know of him. He didn't know the voice of God and how he spoke to people and manifested his will to people. It was by revelation, but Samuel didn't know this. And I want to remind you that even yet today, there are multitudes of people who know about God, but they don't know of God. Moses himself knew all about God, but not until he had a burning bush experience did he know of God. And that's the way with little Samuel. So naturally he thought that it was Eli calling him, thinking perhaps that maybe he'd gotten sick, or maybe he'd fallen out of bed or wanted a drink of water. So he jumped out and of his warm bed, and he ran to Eli to see what he needed. And he said, "Here I am, what do you need?" And Eli, being a little upset probably for being awakened out of a sound sleep for nothing, said, "No, Samuel, it wasn't me. You didn't hear me. I didn't call you. I don't need anything right now. I'm fine. Just go back to bed and go to sleep. All is well. I don't need anything." Eli thought perhaps that Samuel had been dreaming, and so he sent him back to his room. But a short time later, a voice woke Samuel up again. And again, he jumped out of bed, thinking for sure this was Eli calling him. And he ran to his bedside. "You called again for me, Master, so here I am. What is it that you need?" No, son. I didn't call you. Just go back and lie down and go to sleep. So back went Samuel to his room. Still didn't understand that it was God that was revealing himself to him. It was the voice of God. It wasn't Eli. And again, the third time now, a voice woke him up. So he rose and he went to Eli and he said for the third time, "I'm here. You called me. What is it that you need this time?" Now Eli perceived that the Lord had called the child, that there was a special providence in all of this, that the Lord had called him, and how humbling that must have been for Eli to know that when God had something to say, he'd say it to this little child Samuel, his servant, that waited on him and not to him. And it would humble him all the more when afterwards he found that it was a message to himself, yet sent by way of a child, a little child. He surely should have reasoned this out by now. But no, he hadn't. He hadn't thought about this. And God was very displeased with him because he didn't know this yet. He had perceived now that the Lord had called the child, but why, he didn't know. So he said to Samuel this time, "It must be the Lord." So Samuel, you go lie down again. You hear that call again. If he calls you your name again, don't come running to me. Stay right where you are. Just say, "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth." Samuel was still ignorant that it was God that had called him, but Eli now had perceived that it was God, and he gave him the best instructions he could ever have given him. He did it honestly, even though it was a disgrace to him for God to call and pass him by and give this message to a little boy. He was still honest, and he gave him the best instructions. They were, the next time you hear your name, Samuel, don't come running to me, but you just stay right there. Say, "Speak, Lord, for your servant hears you." Notice Samuel needed to call himself now God's servant. There's becoming a closer relationship here between Samuel and God. Must call himself God's servant to show that he desires, he wants to hear what God is saying to him. He must say, "Speak, speak to me, speak now." And he has to prepare himself to hear and promise to attend, to be obedient. Thy servant here, I'm listening. I want to know what you're saying to me. I desire to hear. So when we come to church, this is how we should come. This is how we should prepare ourselves when we come to church, to hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. Pastor says that about every Sunday. Now she's preaching about the churches, the churches out of Revelation, and then every one it says, hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. So we should come just like this. We should come with a desire to hear from God. Nothing else should be on our mind. Not wonder what she's going to preach about. Wonder who's going to be there. I wonder who's going to sing worship, or who's going to lead worship. I wonder. None of those things. We should come as Samuel was instructed, with a desire. I want to hear from you, God. And we must commit ourselves to the power of the word that's being preached. Submit ourselves to it. And then, and only then, church, can we expect to hear from God. We can expect then to hear God speak to us. When we prepare ourselves to and desire and come wanting to hear what God is going to say to us today. But I'm afraid that too many Christians are like Eli. We know what to do, but we don't do it. So now Eli is realizing that it was the voice of God that Samuel heard. He gave him these instructions, told him exactly what to say, and he did it very honestly. For if he had been envious of this honor that was done to this little boy Samuel, he would have done what he could to deprive Samuel of it, but he didn't do that. He could have told him like he had the first two times, just go back to bed, you're just dreaming. But he didn't do that. He gave him the best advice he could. So Samuel went back to his room a fourth time, and he went to sleep, only to be awakened again the fourth time by that same voice calling out his name. But this time, it was different. Notice what we're told. Notice that it says here, it wasn't just a voice that called his name. It says, the Lord came and stood. This time, seems like there was some kind of a visible appearance of God's divine glory to Samuel. Maybe a vision that stood before him. And so this satisfied Samuel that it really wasn't Eli that was calling him, because now he saw the voice that had been calling him. He saw the voice that had been speaking to him. And now notice now the call was doubled. It's Samuel, Samuel, 2 times. 2 times he called his name. As if God delighted to call him by that name. Samuel, Samuel. That made the call even more powerful, even more effective, even more personal to Samuel. So the call on his name twice. And this time Samuel didn't get up and run to Eli. He just laid still and he listened. And he said, "Speak, for thy servant heareth." Because now Samuel's ready for the message he's about to receive from God. So let's read on and learn what this message is. Let's read verses 11 through 14. I guess maybe I skipped some. I'm going to read now, yes, 11 through 14, and find out what this message is. And the Lord said to Samuel, "Behold, I will put thee in Israel, which have told the ears of everyone that heareth shall tingle. And in that day I'll perform against Eli all things which I have spoken concerning his house. And when I begin, I'll also make an end. For I've told him that I will judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knoweth, because his sons make themselves vile, and he didn't restrain them. And therefore I have sworn unto the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be purged with sacrifice or offering forever." Now this is a horrible message for anyone to receive from the Lord, much less a little teenage boy, a child. It was a message concerning Eli's house, and it was a piercing message to all of the nation of Israel. And it was the same message that Eli had received from the man of God, who was some unknown prophet, back in chapter 2 and verses 27 through 36. So thereby the similarity of these 2 messages merely confirmed the authenticity of Samuel's message. That it wasn't something that a young boy had dreamed. It was God. God will not let any of his words fall to the ground. And this message was delivered to Samuel by God. God had come to Samuel to employ him in his service and to send him on an errand to another person. And notice, the message was short. It wasn't as long as that that the man of God had brought to Eli in the 2nd chapter. Because remember, Samuel's just a child. And he couldn't be expected to remember such a long message. But it was a sad message. And it was one that would cause ears to tingle with horror, ears to tingle with alarm. It was a message of wrath. It was a message, a horrible message. Because Eli had not given it as much attention as he should have when he heard it the first time from the man of God. And many times since, when his own conscience had to speak to him and tell him about it. So here it is then. Here's the terrible message. God said, "In that day I will perform against Eli all things which I have spoken concerning his house. And when I begin, I will also make an end." That means that when I begin, nothing shall deter me from bringing all my judgments into fulfillment. I'll judge Eli's house forever, and I'll continue until it's destroyed. Why? Because his sons made themselves vile, and he did not restrain. He didn't use his parental judicial authority as a high priest to curb them, to prevent the disorders which they committed. Or as it is in the Hebrew, he frowned not upon them. He didn't show his dislike for their wicked ways. Well, he showed it a little bit, kind of told them about it, but not to the degree that he should have done. He didn't reprove them. He just lightly spoke to them, but he didn't punish them for the evil that they did and the mischief that it had caused. He didn't deprive them of their power to do mischief, which he, as a father, as a high priest, and as a judge, should have done. He and Eli's son made light of God, and he made his offerings vile in the eyes of the people. And Eli did not compel them to leave the service of God. Instead, he just turned his head the other way, swept their acts under the rug, and preferred the exaltation of his sons before God's honor. You see, church, those that do not restrain the sins of others, when it's their duty and in their power to do it, make themselves enablers, make themselves partakers of the same guilt, and they'll be charged as accessories. They'll be held just as guilty as those who committed the sins. I think we forget that a lot. So those in authority will have a great deal to answer before God if they don't use this authority as a terror to evil workers. Now look at the punishment, the Lord said. The punishment is that which I have said. This is God speaking. That which I have said concerning Eli's house. I've told him that I will judge his house forever. That means that a curse will be put upon Eli's family from generation to generation. And it would be very dreadful, a very horrible curse. And it would be amazing to all of Israel. And the ears of everyone that heard it would tingle. Every Israelite would be struck with terror, would be struck with astonishment when they heard that Eli's sons had been killed, both of them on the same day. Both of them, Phinehas and Hophni, in a battle with the Philistines over the ark. And that even Eli himself, when he heard that his two sons were dead, and that the ark had been captured by the Philistines, he fell over backward from his seat at the gate of the city. And what happened? He broke his neck. Fell over his seat, broke his neck. And when that news got out, all Israel would be struck with terror. How terrible! How terrible are the judgments of the Lord. And God's judgments that we have recorded for us, like this, church, they should affect us today with a holy fear. Not the fear like we have in the flesh, a holy fear of God. For when God says something, he means it. And if he says he'll do it, he'll do it. Look what he said. When I begin it, doesn't mean he's going to begin it right now, but he's going to begin it. When I begin it, don't worry. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to do what I said I would do. God's word never returns void. Also, God now said here, in that day, which says to us that it might not be right now at this hour, but it's going to be sometime, and possibly before this would begin again, before anybody expected it to begin. But don't think that because God delays something, that it's not going to happen. Don't think that just because you can get by with something, that it's over and forgotten. No. God doesn't forget. And he didn't forget what Eli had done, and he didn't pardon him. No, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. For whatever God says he'll do, he's going to do. He said, what I have spoken concerning Eli's house, when I begin, and he didn't tell him when he was going to begin. See, that's what we want to know. We want to know when. But God doesn't tell us. Didn't tell him, Eli. All he said was, when I begin. It means I'm going to begin, but I'm not going to tell you when. I will also begin. There'd be no room left for hope. That was the sentence judgment upon Eli's house might be stayed or mitigated for a while, but it would be fulfilled. God would not revoke the sentence because he backed it with an oath. He said, I have sworn to the house of Eli, and God will not go back from what he has sworn. And furthermore, the iniquity of Eli's house would not be purged with sacrifices and offerings forever. The sons of Eli had sinned with a high hand against God and against warnings, and for their unrepentant, presumptuous offenders of the law, there was no atonement. The law could not atone for them. No atonement could be made for their sin, nor any abatement for their punishment. Now the ordinary sins of the priests and the people were purged by the appointed sacrifices, but the sins of these two sons of Eli's, those sacrifices would never pardon them, could never be purged. That's what God's saying here. This was a message that God gave to this little child Samuel, the message that he was to deliver to Eli, his master, the one that he'd lived with for 10 or 12 years now, since he was 3 years old. To him, this aged, almost blind high priest would be the greatest person in the world. How hard it was for him, a young boy, to have to deliver such a message to one whom he loved, and a high priest at that, and an elder in his age whom he was taught to respect, one whom he owed so much to. And what a terrible thing for Eli to learn from the mouth of God through a young child, that he was so guilty as to deserve such a severe punishment as this, that would never be pardoned. No sacrifice could pardon. This must have been a terrible shock to little Samuel's young, tender, soft heart. But he felt that God did everything right. And therefore, with all the awe and the silent loving of a true child of God, Samuel would grieve, but yet feel that God was wise and that God was good. And so, he delivered this message to Eli. Yes, he faithfully delivered it to Eli. And we're told every whit of it. He didn't mince a word. He never offered to make it better than it was. He delivered the message as plainly and as fully as he had received it from God, not shunning to declare the whole counsel of God. And what should we learn from this? That all of God's ministers, you're all God's ministers, right? All of God's ministers should do the same thing faithfully and answer like Samuel did when God called him. Here am I, ready to declare the whole counsel of God. We need it today. People are saying, what are we supposed to do today? We've got the virus, we've got the... What's going on? Well, same thing. The church should be being Christ-like. We should be praying. We should be trying to gather in the harvest that's quite ready to be brought in. Souls. This should be a time. This might be the last outpouring of the Holy Spirit. We should be bringing in souls. And we should be forever. It tells us in 2 Thessalonians, help each other, encourage each other to look for the rapture. That's what the church should be doing today. So we should learn that when God calls us, we're ready to say, here am I. So Eli faithfully accepted the punishment of his sins. He said, it's the Lord. Let him do what seemeth good. But you know, at this time, I don't think that Eli understood the sentence was not to be just a temporary punishment. Not a final, but it was going to be a final separation of his family from the favor of God. But he didn't think of it that way, so he cheerfully submitted, and we're before he held his peace. And he said, it's the Lord. Let him do what seems to be good to him. And next week, we're going to see the fulfillment of this awful judgment. So I just leave us with this thought today. When you accept God's call, and you say, speak, Lord, your servant here, be prepared. Be prepared to do and to say whatever he asks of you, in spite of the consequences. Any comments? I think we can equate that message to Eli, perhaps, to our own situation today. I think God is calling us. I think he's calling us to repent, to do our first works over, to come back to our first love, to the church, And the church today is but a remnant. It's a remnant, but it's a strong remnant. And I think we need to think upon this lesson and ask God to show us what he would have us to learn today out of the situation in our country and our lives in it today. Father, just help us today. We are helpless, but we're not hopeless, because you are God and you are sovereign. And you know the end from the beginning. Nothing that's happening today was a surprise to you. Let us be reminded that whatever you allow it for our good. Help us, God, to prepare to get our houses in order, our hearts in order before you, and to pray, come quickly.